UAM Azcapotzalco, orgullosamente de esta división y orgullosamente desarrolladora de videojuegos, orgullosamente desarrolladora de aplicaciones también. Y bueno, pues yo les vengo a dar una cordial bienvenida a la doctora Celia, aquí que va a ser nuestra ponente estrella el día de hoy. ¿Sí se oye bien? Porque de repente siento como que sí. Bueno, de hecho está hecho este auditorio con la acústica para no usar micrófono, pero bueno, lo usamos para la grabación. Yo les quiero contar un poquito cómo fue, cómo yo llegué aquí y cómo, pues la necesidad de los videojuegos ahora para mí, y siento yo que para todos ustedes, debiera ser ya como parte de lo que tendríamos que estudiar forzosamente en diferentes matrículas dentro de nuestras currículas. Hace 12 años aproximadamente, bueno, yo tengo dos hijos, 24 y 25 años, y hace 12 años aproximadamente yo era la mamá odiosa que decía no a los videojuegos, son bélicos, son horribles, qué cosa tan agresiva ves ahí. Y, ¿sí? Aquí. Ok. El caso es que cuando llega Pablo, mi hijo, al segundo año de la primaria, empieza a tener problemas de aprendizaje. Y en estos problemas de aprendizaje lo estigmatizan con esta cuestión de tiene déficit de atención, ¿no? Lo que a toda esta generación que tenemos ahora les dijeron en algún momento, sin ponerse a ver que los maestros no tenían idea cómo tratar a estas nuevas generaciones digitales, ¿no? Y bueno, en esta cuestión de estar conociendo qué era lo que tenía mi hijo, caigo en manos de un neuropsicólogo. El neuropsicólogo me facilita interactivos multimedia con los que Pablo empieza a trabajar y empieza a trabajar precisamente con sus procesos cognitivos, ¿no? Memoria, atención, lenguaje. Y entonces ahí es en donde a mí me cae el 20 y el neuropsicólogo me dice, lo que tiene tu hijo es dislexia, una cuestión que se llama dislexia mixta, y lo que a él le cuesta muchísimo trabajo es la comprensión de la lectura. Esta cuestión de la comprensión de la lectura pues corresponde más a un pedagogo que a un psicólogo, pero bueno, él empieza a subsanar esta cuestión, pero yo me dedico a hacer un diplomado en psicología cognitiva. Me encanta el tema, empiezo a entrarle a este tema de los interactivos multimedia y empiezo a trabajar con su neuropsicólogo sobre videojuegos. Y de pronto esto se vuelve en una maestría, una especialidad en psicología cognitiva, una maestría en diseño en nuevas tecnologías y heme aquí ahora desarrollando videojuegos. Doris es una cómplice de esta cuestión, ahora trabajo parte de mi campo ahorita de acción es la acústica y estoy en el campo de los juegos serios, los serious games. Y bueno, precisamente son los videojuegos esta herramienta maravillosa que hace que yo pueda trabajar a todo nivel el juego. Es que como que se va y viene el sonido, ¿no? Está como rarito. Ahí se oye mejor, pero se oye bien en general, creo. Ok, entonces bueno, pues yo empiezo a trabajar juegos, tanto juegos de mesa como, bueno, en un principio yo no era gamer. Por supuesto que para esto y para desarrollar mi tesis de maestría, en donde hago toda una propuesta de cómo estimular la atención visual a través de videojuegos, pues acudo a la doctora Blanca López. Y la doctora Blanca López me dice, pues tienes que ponerte a jugar. Y entonces cuando yo estudiaba y leía sobre videojuegos, a las 2 de la tarde apagaba la computadora y prendía el 10 de mis hijos y jugaba Zelda, ¿no? Y me la pasaba, y tienes que jugar y tienes que aprender de todas estas teorías. Entonces así me vuelvo un poquito gamer, me sentaba con mis hijos, los veía jugar videojuegos, me pasaban el control para que yo matara zombies y los zombies me madrugaban por todos lados. Por supuesto que mi motricidad nada tiene que ver con la que ustedes tienen. Y bueno, así me fui adentrando en los videojuegos. Si bien no soy gamer, ahora soy una absoluta defensora de todo lo que un videojuego puede hacer y todo lo que cognitivamente un videojuego puede estimular, la atención, la memoria, la motricidad, incluso aprendes inglés con ellos. Entonces, bueno, pues esto la verdad es todo un ámbito que para mí es necesario de fomentar y necesario de trabajar. Conocerlo para mí ha abierto un mundo maravilloso. Mis hijos ahora tienen 24, 25 años. Pablo, por supuesto, que es un gamer consumado, tiene la última computadora que con sus ahorros puede comprar para poder jugar mejores videojuegos. Y la verdad yo pienso que esto es algo que en la UAM debemos de tener siempre y muy cercano. Y bueno, pues yo básicamente esa es mi historia, ahora que ya soy desarrolladora. Doris, junto con Camila, trabajó un juego que se llama Hula Baloo, que ahora estamos haciendo este videojuego que pretende hacer conciencia de que el ruido es un contaminante. Entonces, bueno, ya tenemos por ahí algunos desarrollos y está también interesante. Y Blanca López siempre atrás, siempre preguntándoles, siempre ayudándolos y pues bueno que aquí estoy con Blanca, con Doris y con nuestras invitadas especiales. Bienvenidos, qué gusto tenerlos aquí, es un placer para nosotros. Gracias. Tú sí eres gamer.
Bueno, yo estoy aquí. No, bueno, creo que Verónica ya lo dijo todo. A mí me tocó el año pasado que también se inauguró un foro de videojuegos. Para los que no me conozcan, soy el actual director de la División de Ciencias para el Diseño aquí en Azcapotzalco. Yo creo que, aunado a lo que dice Verónica, hay mayor demanda por no juego, sino el videojuego como un objeto de estudio desde diferentes perspectivas, y eso aquí incluso pues abran un espacio para empezar a profundizar en el entendimiento de este tipo de tecnología, ¿no? Yo hay veces que cito que incluso hay muchos casos de estudio. Está un caso de estudio que no voy a olvidar nunca, que es el de cómo empleados de eBay utilizan Call of Duty para, mientras están jugando, hablar de los problemas que tienen que resolver. Entonces, más allá de ponerlos en una reunión presencial, a ver, oye, ¿cómo solucionamos esto? La gente está jugando videojuegos y se está intercomunicando a través de este espacio para resolver problemas. Y así muchos. Entonces, ok, que si soy gamer o no, pues bueno, yo a mis 46 años, pues soy generación Atari, generación Intellivision. Lo dije creo que la otra vez y lo repito de nuevo, pues sí, tengo un hijo de 11 años que es gamer, consume muchos videojuegos, pero la otra vez se nos ocurrió darle una de estos juegos de Atari de antes, con 100 juegos en uno solo, y ahí sí le di una pasada que no… Bueno, pero es que son las bases del videojuego, o sea, te puedes divertir con un juego tan sencillo como con uno muy complejo, ¿no? Entonces, disfruto, también el videojuego pues puede ser una herramienta para, ¿cómo se llama? Hasta para disfrutarlo en familia, ¿no? A mí sí me gustan los de zombies también, y ahorita estoy descubriendo Maiden 2018 con mi hijo de 19 de fútbol americano. Pero bueno, esperemos que el tema aquí ya parece consultorio, porque mi hijo también tiene un desorden cognitivo, entonces, bueno, en fin, no, yo creo que el tema de los videojuegos espero que vaya consolidándose aquí en la división. Estamos en una revisión también del posgrado de visualización de la información. Yo quiero revisar las líneas de generación, sobre todo porque creo que el área de videojuegos puede tener potencial ¿no? Y además cada vez tiene más demanda. Entonces, bueno, no hace falta además dar las cifras de lo importante que es la industria del videojuego y del software en México. Entonces, para eso están ustedes, que son los que saben. Nosotros nada más estamos aquí para desearles el mejor de los éxitos, agradecer a los ponentes que nos acompañan y pues felicidades, ¿no? Y que arranquen las actividades. Muchas gracias.
Bueno, como a mí me toca esta parte oficial, ok, siendo las 16:48 del día 22 de julio del 2018, queda inaugurado el DEVHR UAM Azcapotzalco. Muchas felicidades.
¿Ya? Vale, ok, vale. Bueno, primero que nada, muchas gracias por estar aquí. Ah, ahí viene el doctor Revueltas, ¿qué tal? Hello. Estamos aquí los tres alborotadores del Departamento de Investigación y Conocimiento. Doctor, ¿cómo está? ¿Qué tal? Primero que nada, les agradecemos por estar aquí. Apoyar el… Decídete dónde te vas a sentar. No, la subautoridad. Subautoridad. Vale. Bueno. En función… ¿Qué tal, Bueno, bienvenidos a UAM Azcapo. Pues, la verdad es que estamos como muy emocionados de poder tener el DEVHR aquí. Siempre habíamos estado en el CCD y está precioso, pero bueno, que lo tengamos aquí en la casa de estudios, bueno, it blows our minds. Hay dos personas a las que yo quisiera agradecer mucho, sobre todo por el impulso que han dado en los últimos años a todo lo que es la difusión del juego, no solamente el videojuego, sino en general, juegos de rol, juegos de tablero y actividades alrededor de lo lúdico. ¿Por qué? Porque además han abierto nuevos espacios y han permitido, gracias a eso, que DEVHR sea lo que es hoy. Ahí tenemos atrás a Héctor Guerrero y a Jacinto Quesnel, que son un par de autoridades en el tema. Come on down, guys. A ver. Hace que fue como 3 o 4 años que David nos juntó a todos y que nos preguntaron si ahí que estábamos en el CCD ya una tarde ya todos golpeados, no me acuerdo si era jueves o era viernes, que si le entrábamos o no. Y bueno, pues ellos tienen un proyecto, lo siguen teniendo, lo han armado y además justamente el otro día comentaba con los chicos de cine que además son evangelizadores de corazón, o sea, de veras tienen fe en que los juegos pueden hacer una sociedad mejor y yo les creo. Entonces para mí por eso es así como que la gloria que podemos tener este evento, aunque es este año, quién sabe el que siga, que si tengamos siquiera país, pero bueno, pero mientras lo tenemos, qué bueno que estemos todos el día de hoy. Esto ha sido posible, así que gracias a también mi compañero Roberto García, que me hace segunda en cuanta cosa orate se me ocurre. Y hace muchos años él me odiaba, pero un día vio mis juegos de rol y resulta que él jugaba Dungeons and Dragons y ahora somos amigos forever. Así es como funciona. Por supuesto el doctor Revueltas, que le tocó el vía crucis de mi tesis de doctorado, que aquí fue la primera tesis que tuvimos de videojuegos, en la época en que los videojuegos no son objeto de diseño, pero bueno, eso ya cambió. Él fue una de las personas que nos ayudó a hacerlo. Sí. Y bueno, ¿qué más les puedo decir? David, que no está aquí presente, era mi estudiante, se volaba las clases de Judith Nasser en mi clase, pues sí. Doris, no tuve el placer de darle clase, pero bueno, estábamos de coaching. Se rumora que sí, que rola bien. Bueno, este es su primer año y ahí va. Algunas vicisitudes, pero bueno, cuentas con nuestro apoyo. Y pues, ¿qué más les puedo decir? Pues que ya empecemos las festividades, ¿no? Creo que tenemos un video que Doris nos quería mostrar, ¿no? A ver, Chinto, ¿qué haces allá? Yo creo que, a ver, esos dos que están allá, que bajen acá, please, a ver, bájenlos, como concierto. Jacinto que nos va a dar la bendición.
¿Qué hago? ¿Rompo el micrófono? Bueno, pues un gran agrado estar aquí, ver que sigue prendida la antorcha, mi más profundo agradecimiento a la UAM Azcapotzalco, bueno, a las personas que han estado implicadas en esto. Bueno, justo en mi conferencia el miércoles voy a hablar más profundo de eso, pero DEVHR empieza hace ya 8 años, de una necesidad muy visceral de entender por qué si yo quería hacer juegos no era algo válido, ¿no? Y no se podía, y lo intentábamos, y le metíamos dinero y trabajo, y íbamos con los estudios, y nadie nos podía explicar qué es lo que estaba mal. Y entonces, como yo llevaba desde la adolescencia trabajando en eventos nerd, como la MESIF o la Mole o la TNT o lo que sea de esas cosas, pues lo que me vino a la cabeza de repente era, más bien, queríamos primero hacer un centro cultural y de estudio de juegos, que cosa que sigue sin ser una realidad, pero ya que estoy en eso. Y luego, ya bajándolo a la realidad, pues hicimos lo que sabíamos hacer, ¿no? Que era hacer eventos, porque era lo que ya conocíamos y dijimos, podemos hacer un evento de juegos, pero no un evento de juegos dirigido al público final o al comercio o a la venta de juegos, sino un evento de juegos dirigido a pensar y hacer juegos también, ¿no? Que tenía que ser importante, ¿no? Todo el contexto completo. En esta locura juntamos integrantes del gobierno, la gente que pudimos agarrar de la academia que estaba haciendo cosas de juegos, la que encontramos, porque sabemos ahora que había mucha más gente haciendo cosas de juegos a nivel académico que la que encontramos ese primer año. Y pues todo el apoyo que pudimos agarrar en ese entonces, ¿no? Y entonces ese primer año en el Centro Cultural Universitario Tlatelolco se hizo el primer DEVHR, que fue un evento enorme además, y un tiradero de dinero. No tienen por qué saberlo, pero nos costó muchísimo dinero de nuestras bolsas. Y de ahí pues ha sido un evento más sustentable por muchos años gracias al apoyo de Conaculta, luego Secretaría de Cultura, en 2 espacios distintos, Centro Multimedia, Centro de Cultura Digital. Y pues también creo que es natural y va con los momentos. El evento ha cambiado varias veces de formato, ha tenido varios giros interesantes, pero la idea sigue siendo la misma, que es estar pegado a esta inquietud de buscar la frontera de lo que se puede y no puede hacer con los juegos, o lo que podemos pensar o dialogar acerca de los juegos. Y este fue un lema que acuñamos en el tercer DEVHR, que ya no se ha usado mucho, pero lo quiero rescatar aquí, que es algo que creo que está en la esencia de DEVHR y que se va a cumplir durante todo el evento que vamos a estar haciendo esta semana. Es básicamente, es muy bueno estar aquí hablando de juegos todo el día.
Y bueno, ya que vino a dar lata, pues el doctor Revueltas, ¿no?
Bueno, yo purgué. Gracias, chicos. En serio, gracias. Creo que es muy importante. Y haciendo remembranza sobre algunas cosas. Cuando enfrentamos el problema de la tesis de la hoy doctora Blanca López, partimos a veces de hipótesis muy elementales, que eran Emilio Durkheim, el gran sociólogo francés, cuando planteaba toda persona para poder sobrevivir en la sociedad tiene que generar una idea sobre el entorno social que le está constituyendo. Incluso por eso los niños muchas veces desde pequeños hacen juegos de representación. A los alfiles, por ejemplo, si ven un ajedrez, a los alfiles les dicen que son los maestros, el rey es el director y los peones son los niños y simulan la escuela. Entonces, si hay esto que planteaba Durkheim, también planteaba la posibilidad de que el juego fuera uno de los grandes mecanismos de comunicación social y de integración social. Estamos ante un hito en la historia humana en este sentido. ¿Por qué? Porque planteamos con Blanca, todas sociedades hacen poesía, todas sociedades diseñan, ergo todas sociedades juegan. Y esto está ultra demostrado. Digamos, pongo un ejemplo que me gusta poner, Cortés cuando entabla una suerte de amistad con Moctezuma, le establece porque están los dos jugando, un juego muy popular entre los aztecas, ¿sí? Y Cortés se divierte, Moctezuma le enseña el juego, ya después pasa lo que tiene que pasar. Pero bueno, hay juegos, y es parte del gran mecanismo complejo de la sociedad humana y cómo lo proyecta. Por eso cuando Blanca planteó esto de hacer o que Azcapotzalco recibiera el Foro Internacional de Juegos, se le tenía que aplaudir, se le tenía que apoyar. Y qué bueno, en este sentido, que una división como la nuestra lo esté planteando en términos revolucionarios. O sea, estamos viendo que el videojuego es, yo creo que el gran aporte que tiene la tesis de Blanca, es también un objeto de diseño. El mundo, ¿por qué digo que ha cambiado? Porque estamos aprendiendo una nueva forma de jugar, inédita en la historia humana. Y esto está planteando un conjunto de problemas sociales y de problemas de diseño y de problemas de formas de pensamiento no antes vistas. Entonces, tenemos que discutir esto. Más allá que, sí, efectivamente, todos jugamos y creo que, así como dicen, un hombre envejece en la medida que deja de amar, yo creo que también un hombre envejece, también una mujer, en la medida que deja de jugar. Y en ese sentido el juego es universal y lo celebramos y lo celebraremos siempre. Entonces, bienvenido, qué bueno que hicieron esto, qué bueno que Blanca se preocupó por esto, qué bueno que haya un tipo como Roberto que en ese sentido es ejemplar, ha aprendido indirectamente mucho de él y qué bueno que estén ustedes aquí. Nos encargaremos de que mañana haya más gente y haya más gente y haya más gente, de mucha gente. Vamos, si en UAM Azcapotzalco jugamos a tener 4 rectores en un espacio de 1 año y medio, yo creo que podemos hacer otro tipo de cosas que también son muy amenas. Muchas gracias.
Entonces, Doris, ¿qué sigue?
Quería evitar este momento en realidad. Pues bueno, pues es una maravilla participar en DEVHR. Por azares del destino caí aquí, por Verónica prácticamente, que fue la que me jaló más a este pequeño gran mundo de hacer videojuegos, ¿no? Como todos, creo que voy a agradecer a la UAM por darnos el espacio, Vero por echarnos la mano, a la doctora Blanca, a Jacinto, por parte del TEC de Monterrey, al staff que nos estuvo apoyando, a los chamacos de allá. Y pues nada, espero que gocen esta semana, le saquen el jugo así a tope, son temas muy, muy, muy interesantes, más si ahorita están clavados en hacer videojuegos pero no saben por dónde empezar, DEVHR es como el faro creo yo, fue mi faro en su momento y espero que nosotros podamos apoyarlos con sus proyectos, encaminarlos y llevar esta industria del videojuego a otro nivel, ¿no? Pues para finalizar con esta inauguración, pues les voy a poner un pequeño tráiler de los proyectos que se lanzaron, que se inscribieron en esta convocatoria para esta edición y que vamos a tener el próximo viernes aquí en el lobby del L, para que testeen sus proyectos, les den un feedback y… Sí, ¿no? ¿Viernes? Sí, viernes, no me pongan en duda. Viernes, desde las 10 de la mañana vamos a estar allá, vamos a estar en el L. Las conferencias, ya saben, vamos a estar en el W a partir de las 10 de la mañana con estos rockstars. Pues nada, pues muchas gracias por estar aquí y disfruten de DEVHR esta semana. Por allá nos pueden apoyar con la luz, por favor. Bueno, estos son algunos de los proyectos que van a estar como invitados para el Game Hour, que es nuestro showroom. Esta edición de DEVHR se separó en tres, digámoslo así, que es la parte de las conferencias, los talleres y el showroom. Entonces, estos son algunos proyectos que van a poder probar este próximo viernes.
nahuales, powerful beings who were the bridge between humankind and nature. Eran el puente entre la humanidad y la naturaleza.
Congratulations! Woolly Blast! Download now on the Google Play.
Pues bueno, estos son algunos de los proyectos que tendremos en esta edición de DEVHR. Creo que pueden notar que hay calidad. Entonces, solamente aquí el chiste es impulsar, ¿no? Llevarlo a más. Ahorita que me tocó la misión de dirigir el foro, esa es como la visión que ahorita podría tenerse, ¿no? Sacar proyectos de universidades y acompañarlos, bueno, llevarlos de la mano, ayudarles a hacer quizás su próxima campaña y ver hasta dónde puede llegar, el alcance que pueden tener sus proyectos. Pero siento yo, bueno, como mi proyecto de titulación nació de aquí, confío en que aquí hay muchas cabezas muy buenas para que CYAD sea una parte fundamental para que se lleve a más, o más bien para que el desarrollo de la industria del videojuego tenga otro alcance, ¿no? Y creo que aquí es un buen inicio. Y pues nada, muchas gracias, los invito a las conferencias que se van a llevar esta semana, los talleres y el showroom. Y pues nada, sería todo. Por cierto, chicos, hoy tenemos charla magistral con nuestra invitada estelar, Celia Joden, que es nuestra especialista en User Experience. Trabajó en Epic Games del 2013 al 2017 en un juego quizás no tan popular como Fortnite. Entonces, para que se den una vuelta, entonces no se lo pierdan, va a estar épico, ¿va? tiene super carrera armada en psicología, entonces es experta en User Experience. Entonces, para que le echen un ojo más que nada a este tema, que es fundamental para la creación de videojuegos, chicos, entonces, por favor, exprímanla lo más que se pueda. De hecho, les voy a dar como una breve introducción sobre quién es Celia. Celia trabajó como directora de experiencia de usuario en Epic Games. Creo que todos sabemos quién es Epic Games. Estuvo ahí desde el 2013 hasta el 2017 trabajando en esta joya llamada Fortnite. Entonces, Celia, bienvenida. Welcome, please.
Gracias. Hola, ¿qué tal? Es un placer de estar aquí con vosotros. Muchas gracias por su invitación. Se me llamo Celia, or Celia in French, or Celia in English, whichever you prefer. And now I'm going to switch to English because my Spanish is very rusty, and I apologize for that. Yeah, that is what's said. I have a background in psychology, have a PhD in psychology. Is it okay if I'm here? Can you see me all right? Okay, it's better because then I can see you. I've been working in the video game industry for the past 10 years. I started working at Ubisoft in France, and I was working at the editorial team because Ubisoft is a French company. Then I moved to Ubisoft in Montreal, so that's the big studio that does Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, Rainbow Six. So I worked on Rainbow Six. And then I moved to LucasArts in San Francisco. I was working on Star Wars games, like Star Wars 1313 that you may have heard of. But unfortunately did not ship because Disney bought Lucas and they closed LucasArts. So we were all sad and we were all out of jobs. And this is how I moved to Epic Games in 2013. And my job was to build up user experience, build up the mindset, build up the strategy, build a playtest lab, do all that. And I was director of UX at the studio level. So I worked on all the different Epic Games product, including Unreal Engine, Paragon, what else, like Spyjinx that's not out yet, and of course Fortnite. And Fortnite was one of the first team I worked at Epic Games, and they were very keen on working with me. So we had a very good process. And I worked at Epic until last year. And last year I left Epic after Battle Royale launched and exploded. And I started to be a consultant. So now I'm consulting and I'm doing conferences and I help other teams, small teams, like indie teams, big teams, to apply the same principles that we applied on Fortnite. So this is what I'm going to talk about. And user experience is kind of new. Until recently, like people were thinking, we're just going to do whatever we do, and whatever, if people don't like it or don't understand it, well, it's their problem. I played that game Kung Fu Rabbit. That was, I think, back in 2012. And I was lazy. I was lousy at that game, and apparently I died a lot. And I unlocked this achievement. And it was really funny because it was one of the first time that it was acknowledged that if the player, your audience, because obviously I wanted to play that game because I downloaded it, but if I was not able to go through it, or if I have problems, probably not my fault. It's probably a problem in the design that could be fixed, so that your players are going to have a better experience. So this is what user experience is really trying to understand who is your audience, who are going to be your users, and what experience you want to offer them, and you want to verify that this is the experience they're going to have. Usually we talk about the experience with the whole thing, so it's not coming from video games, it's coming from industrial design and web design. Like for example, at Apple, they were very into user experience, and they thought about the experience like the first time you hear about a product, that the marketing, the trailers that you see, when you open the box of an Apple product, it's already a great experience. You're like, oh yeah, it's awesome. And then also how you interact with the product and all that. Everything is about the experience your user is going to have. You need to think about how you're going to delight them. And when we talk about a video game, Here I'm going to mostly talk about when players interact with the game itself. And so it's how target users are going to perceive and interact with the software, including on engaging the experience is relative to the design intentions. And that's really important because when you design something as a developer, you have a mental model of what you want the game to be about. You're thinking about, oh, I'm going to do a game, it's going to be an FPS, and it's going to be scary and all that. So you think about what you want to create, and you're already constrained with the system they're going to use. You're constrained with what engine you're going to use, and how many people you have on your team, and how much time you have to ship your game, and how much budget you have. So all these are constraints that are already changing a little bit what you had in mind. But in the end, you're not shipped with your game. Your user, your end players, they're going to try to figure out what, they're going to make their own mental model of what they believe the game is about, only through their interaction with the system image. And the system image is the interface between the system and the players. So it's everything between like the sound design, the music, the art, the gameplay, the controls, all that is the interface between the system and the players. And so your system image should be good enough so that players can understand what you wanted the game to be about. So user experience, having a user experience mindset, is to put yourself in your player's shoes so that you can align your mental model with their. And you want to verify that the experience you wanted to offer is what they gonna experience. This is what UX is about. And so, whoa, super fast, calm down. So to do that, there's a few steps that I just wanted to talk to you about. It's gonna go pretty fast, and I'm just gonna do a high-level explanation of the things, but it's just for you to have the big bullet points of what this is about, so then you can deep dive into it if you're more interested. But one of the first things we need to look into is understand how the brain works. Because if you want to understand how people are going to experience your game, you need to understand how the brains perceive, memorize things, so you can anticipate problems. So this is what we're going to see first, basics of cognitive science, psychology. And it's going super fast. I don't know what's the problem with this thing. Calm down. So now you saw the answer of the question, so that's a problem. Okay, so when you learn, what's happening in your brain, it can be like schematized in here. It starts with perception. So you don't learn from the voice, you learn through the information you get from your senses. So we don't only have 5 senses, we have many other senses, but we have 5 major, like people always talk about. And then through process of information, through learning, what's going to happen in the end is going to change your memory. It's changing physically the connections in your brain, what we call the synapses. And there's a lot of, like you were talking about the fears of video games, and one of the fears that I hear a lot about is like, oh, video games are bad for kids, it's rewiring their brains. Well, actually, yes. But anything you do in life is rewiring your brain, because your brain is not hardwired in the first place. The brain is what we call plastic. So whatever you do is going to change your brain. If you learn how to play the guitar, it's changing your brain. If you watch a movie, it's going to change your brain. If you talk to your friends, it's going to rewire your brain. Watching a movie, rewiring your brain, reading a book, etc. Right now, I'm rewiring your brain. It's okay. Don't fear anything. It's all normal. Okay, so this is what happens, and of course there's a lot of factors that are going to make the learning process better or worse, more efficient or less efficient. For example, your physiological factors, like if you didn't sleep that well last night, if you're tired, or if you didn't eat well, you're not going to learn as well as if you had a good night's sleep and eating a lot of good food for your brain, like nuts, for example. But here we're going to mainly talk about attention. This is a very important factor to make learning and information processing better. So this is a very simplified version of what's happening in your brain. In reality, it's not as simple. We don't have buckets that are independent like that. It's not a serial process, because you have perception in memory, you have attention in memory. It's not even a process, because the brain does not work like a computer. We use a lot of terms coming from computers because it's helping us, it's a good metaphor for us to understand how it works, but the brain does not work like a computer. So it's way more complicated than that, but for the sake of our brains today, we just have that simplified version. Okay, so I'm going to start with perception. I'm going to give you an example from each: perception, memory, and attention, to explain to you what it means for games. And so this is where you saw the answer, but whatever, we're going to pretend we didn't see it. So take a look at this image. What do you perceive here? All right, Street Fighter characters. Okay. Because you saw the answer. But usually when I show that picture, which is really interesting because I do that presentation across the world, but it's usually to a population that love video games or are into game development or geeks. And even then, when I show this picture, usually about 30 to 40% is like Street Fighter characters, whereas the others are like, I don't know, maybe people, I'm not sure. Exactly, yeah, or sometimes people see Link from Zelda in this one. Yeah. So it's really interesting, and if you're colorblind, like about 8% of the male population, well, you hate me right now, and you don't give a shit about this slide because you feel left out of it because you don't perceive the same thing as others. So this is really to just make you realize that we believe that perception is like we perceive the reality, but it's not true. Perception is a construct of the mind. And so depending on who you are, depending on your attachment to that specific game, depending on your culture, depending on your expectations, you are not going to perceive the same thing as I'm going to perceive, as that your neighbor is going to perceive. And that's really important to keep in mind. Perception, it's subjective. I think I'm just going to use the keyboard because it's going to be better. A perception is subjective. That's the reason why in the game it's really important to keep that in mind, because in games it's all about inputs. You have visual inputs, you have sound inputs, everything is about inputs that people are going to have to perceive in the way you wanted them to perceive them. And so because the way you perceive them, especially since you're the one designing the game, so of course you're going to have a biased version of for you is going to be obvious, but for your players not so much. So you always have to take a step back and verify if your player is going to perceive all the inputs in the game the way you wanted them. So this is the reason why we test the main inputs. You can't test everything, it takes too long, but you're going to test the main important things. So in 2013 when I arrived, Fortnite was already running, so we could already like play test a bunch of stuff, and I wanted to test the main icons in the game. So can you tell me what you think this icon is representing in the game? The traps. So good job. So this is how it looked like back in 2013. Of course, everything was placeholders, WEIP. But if you take a look at so here this was your inventory. These are the traps. But when I had players play the game a little bit and then ask them, what is this? Some players told me, oh, this is the ammunition icon. So if you look at the ammunition icon, it's actually very close to this one. So this is when you do not want to have any confusion there. Fortnite is not a game about memorizing icons and trying to figure out what it is. We don't want people to be confused, especially for an icon that's as important, because traps is pretty central in Fortnite. So I'm going to use that now. What the designers did, I asked them, hey, how about we use, instead of trying to make it look as it is in Fortnite, how about we use a stereotypical representation of a trap, just like a bear trap. There's no bear traps in the game, but everybody, when they see that, they can recognize a bear trap. And then there's no confusion anymore with ammunition. So this is the sort of things that we do. We verify the perception of our players. We don't assume that it's going to be obvious, because of course it's obvious for us because we designed it. Now I'm going to talk about memory. This is called the forgetting curve. That was made by Ebbinghaus, who is a German psychologist from the 19th century. And he wanted to understand how memory works. So he created a bunch of syllables that did not have any meaning, just to make sure it was not familiar with the material. So it was like syllables like look, shroom, stuff like that. So he had to learn them by heart. And so he learned a bunch of them by heart, and then it was varying when he had to recall them. And if you take a look at this graph, once he knew them by heart, and when he had to recall these syllables, he had 100% good answer when it's immediate. But after only 19 minutes, it's dropping down to 60% of good answer. And after about a day, it's dropping nearly to 30%, which means that that's the worst case scenario. If you're learning something, a content that doesn't mean anything, that you do not care about, and you don't use any specific techniques to remember it, you're going to lose about 70% of the content from one day to the next. And that's kind of important to remember because a video game is typically an experience that we have across several days. Hopefully weeks, hopefully months, and maybe years. So you want to make sure that players are not going to forget very important information, because otherwise it's going to be a problem. They're going to feel confused and maybe drop. So what we do, we're going to do a little test here. I'm going to test your memory. Do you all can picture the sculptor, the thinker by Auguste Rodin? Do you all know that sculptor? Okay, try to remember it, and try to remember on which leg or legs lay which arm or arms of the thinker. And this is where I sometimes see people do the gesture to try to remember. So what do you say? Left on right? Like this? Yeah? Okay. Left on left, okay, left on left. What else? Both? Yeah? All right, let's take a look at the answer. It has both arms. That was pretty good. Both arms on the left leg. And so most of us don't remember that perfectly. And you know why? It's because memory is a reconstruct of the mind. So perception is a construct of the mind. Memory is a reconstruct. We don't take a picture that we store somewhere because the brain is not a computer, and then when we have to remember it, we remember perfectly. We don't. We have an approximation of what to remember. Unless you're an artist and maybe you try to copy at some point the thinker, then you really processed that statue way more deeply than just like regular people like us who just maybe saw it once or twice. Even if it's iconic, we can't remember it perfectly. So because of that, we try to make sure, so there's a lot of techniques that we use to help players remember, so we give reminders and stuff like that. But also what we do, because our memory is fallible, we make sure that players do not have to remember too much information, especially in a game that's really heavy on gameplay like Fortnite. That's the reason why we need HUDs, because the heads-up display is where we can display all the information that we do not want players to remember. And some designers think, oh, we need to remove the HUD to make the game more immersive. You can do that if your game is very simple, but if it's complicated, you should not do that, because if you do that, then players don't remember what they have to do, and then they have to pause the game or go online to figure it out, and this is when you break immersion. So you have to make sure, like for example in Fortnite, every time the player is close to a searchable object, there's the pop-up saying, oh, you need to press E to search. We do not want players to remember that. Or if they want to craft something that's cool, like the exterminator, we don't want players to have to remember how much copper ore they need to gather. We don't want them to remember that. We want them to be excited about what they want to craft, because crafting is one of the pillars of Fortnite, so they can pin that information in the HUD and then, just focus on what they care about. So this is what's important. You need to find ways to remove, like alleviate a memory load on players. All right, you're going to play another game. I'm going to show you cards. You're going to choose one card and try to remember that card, but it's going to go pretty fast. So choose one card, remember that card. I told you it was going fast. Do you remember it? Okay. I bet I can guess which card you picked and make it disappear. Dun, dun, dun. All right, so I've changed all the cards. This is a very lame magic trick because I'm not a magician, but this is actually what magicians do when they do magic tricks. This specific thing is called misdirection of attention, because our attentional resources are pretty scarce. What we do when we have to process something, we're going to focus on one thing, and we're not going to remember all the cards. We're just going to focus on one. And so if I change all the cards, you don't really realize that what I did here. And this is a very well-known phenomenon in psychology called change blindness. We are not good at remembering big changes, like seeing big changes from one scene to the next when we're focused on something else. And we believe we're good at multitasking, and that's the problem. We are not good at that, but we believe we're good at it. So we make a ton of mistakes, and sometimes we don't see that a big change has happened just because we were focused on something else. And that's the reason why you should not be multitasking, even though we believe we're good at it, because you're always more not as good as if you do one thing and then the next. So in games, what does it mean? Because our attention is scarce, we need to be careful about all the information that we give to the players at the same time, more specifically during the onboarding part of the game, when the players need to learn about your game, because this is when their attention is the most requested. Just like imagine the first time you learn how to ride a bike or to drive a car or whatever, play guitar. The first time, it's hard. You need to focus really deeply on something, learn how to drive, and if someone's talking to you, like, shut up, I need to concentrate. It's the same thing when you learn about a game. You need to learn about the controls, about the objectives, about the mechanics. So you really have to focus on a lot of stuff. And so if we're trying to teach players, so this is coming from a playtest session from Fortnite in 2014, we want to teach them about how to regen health. So back in that time, it's not the case anymore in Fortnite, but back in the time, you could regen health by using a health item like this one. And so we wanted to tell players, once they were reaching like half health, have a pop-up explaining how it's working. So it looked like this. Okay, so you're going to see the player's going to get hurt here. And so this is when this is flashing and this is popping. But the player is super focused into destroying zombies. So most of them actually did not even see that something was changing in the interface because of the change blindness. So you have to remember that and be careful with that, because you don't want your players to be multitasking, especially at the beginning. Now, a lot of action games are all about challenging your attention, which is fine. It's fine. At some point, you need to shoot multiple enemies, and then, you need to take cover. Like you were saying, games are good to train your attention. But when you learn about the game, you do not want players to be overwhelmed. You want them to learn about the game, be competent in the game, and then once they're competent, you're going to challenge them. That's like when you learn how to drive the car. You don't want to challenge them while they learn how to drive. But once they know how to drive, you want to challenge them on the race, for example. This is what is cool about it, once you know how to drive the car. So this is what you need to remember, and it's very fast, and it's a very overview of a few things, but this is what cognitive science can bring to video games. Like, make sure you can anticipate the problems so that your players are going to have a good experience and they're going to get better at the game and then be challenged where you want them to be challenged. So remember that. Perception is subjective, attention is scarce, and memory is fallible. And the brain is very good at making sense of the world with very little information. But because of that, we also make a lot of mistakes. We are taking shortcuts. And we are biased. And our biases it's a problem, because we're good at seeing the biases in other people. We're not very good at recognizing our own biases. And this is the reason why it's really important to playtest. And it's important to recognize that when you create something, you have that curse of knowledge. You know what you're developing very well. Just like if someone is asking you for directions, for you, you have a very clear mental model of the city you live in. But for that person, it's like, you go straight, and then the third on the left, and you take a left, and then after the bookstore, you take a right, and then for the person, it's already like, it's too much information, I can't remember it. So you need to always take a step back and verify if what you're trying to accomplish is really what's going on in your player's mind. All right, so This is why you need game UX. And game user experience takes its roots in cognitive science, so we can anticipate problems and during the process make sure we fix them fast so we can actually accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. Good user experience is about two main things. We look into usability, which is the ability of the game to be used, just like the ability of this bottle to be opened. On bottles, you have little dents on here, so you can have a better grasp on it. This is what we call usability, and it's also here it's smaller, so it's easier to grab it. So that was usability is about. Usability is for industrial design, for objects, it's for web design, and it's for games. And for games, it's the same thing. We need players to understand how to navigate menus, or to understand the icons, all these things. But a very good usable game is not necessarily fun. And for video games, we need players to have fun. So what does it mean to have fun? I call that engageability. So it's the ability of the game to be engaging. And I'm going to just explain very quickly because I don't have the time. But these are the ingredients that we look into. So for usability, we need to make sure like the signs and feedback in the game are clear. Like here, the sign of where I can grab the bottle and open it is clear. So in games, we need to make sure like players know what to do, where to go, what this icon means, what this character is doing, etc. And it needs to be clear, and form follows function is what we call in design affordance. We need to have clear affordance of what we can do. And just going to give you one example here. Players are going to try to figure out what they need to do. And they're sometimes going to see signs where you did not actually put any signs. Here's an example where we're testing. So when we were developing Fortnite, we were testing a lot of different PvE and PvP modes. And this is an example of a PvE mode that we were trying. So it's a mode where you play with 4 players collaboratively, and you're trying to accomplish something. And in this mode, players had to find a machine and then find a generator to turn the machine on. And to do that, they needed to link, they needed to craft these things. So they needed material to craft this thing to link a generator to the machine. The problem is that usually artists create lots of assets way before the gameplay is settled. And one of the assets that they created is this thing. That looks like a generator because there's the electrical spark here. And so players stumbled upon this thing and stayed like 10 minutes on it trying to connect that thing to the machine. But this is not a gameplay asset. This is just a decoration asset. So this is what we call a misleading sign, a misleading form. It's called force affordance. So I'm going to show you a video of it. So I'm going to plug the thing because otherwise it's too noisy if I plug it the whole time. See, it's noisy. So it looked like this.
Only 30 seconds left. Another day, another dollar. Let's get to it, guys.
Anybody? Power connector?
Where do you want it?
Try to put it where all these nodes I have placed are, beside these transformers. Yeah.
Why the hell is this not working? So, of course, we were watching the test and we were like, oh, fuck, what's happening? And this happens very often in a game. I'm sure this happened to you. You believe something is working in a way, and you're gonna, because you're sure this is working in that way, you're sure that the game designer tried to message you, and that you're so smart that you're gonna figure it out. but it's actually not doing anything. And this is very frustrating. And this is when you lose immersion, because you're like, what the hell? Fuck that game. So you want to avoid that by any means, because you want to make sure that players feel that they're discovering stuff, and it's pretty exciting to do that. But you need to avoid these problems. Okay, so that was just one example. Now I'm going to talk about engageability, how to make sure the games are going to be fun, engaging, immersive, all these stuff. We don't really know how that works in humans. So these are the ingredients that we look into. So first of all, we look into motivation, because we don't do anything if we're not motivated to do it. So we need to understand human motivation. There's two big things in human motivation. We have intrinsic motivation, so it's the motivation to do the things for the pleasure of doing them, like playing a game. Or you have extrinsic motivation, where you do something to gain something else. You go to work, if you don't like your work, you go to work to get money because you need the money to buy video games, I don't know. Or it's like you go to an exam because you need good grades to get the degree and then do what you want. So that's extrinsic motivation. For extrinsic motivation, you need to have clear goals. You need to have rewards accordingly. If you go to work and then you don't get your paycheck, you're like, what the heck? I'm not going to come back. So you need to have good rewards for that. But for intrinsic motivation, so we're still trying to figure out, but we understand now that people, like humans, are interested into doing activities for the sake of doing them, if these activities is satisfying our need of competence, autonomy, and relatedness. And games are really powerful for that, because if they're good games, they make you feel competent, you get better at it. So I'm not going to talk about a lot of that because I don't have time, but we look into motivation, and then we look into emotion and game flow, and both these things are helping us, supporting motivation. So game flow is about keeping the game at a good level of difficulty and pacing and learning curve. So you're always like feeling challenged but not overwhelmed. So you need to keep players in there. And what's really important is always to show value and to explain to players, to make sure they understand the meaning of what they need to do. Like here, this is how we place the player in a situation where they're challenged. Like they're in a pit, they need to get out of it, and there's a shiny chest. So that's extrinsic motivation. You want to get out to get the chest. But you have also the intrinsic motivation to just get out of there. You want to explore the world, so you intrinsically want to get out of there. And this is where we teach you how to build. So you can build stairs and get out of there. So it's really important when you think about how you're going to onboard your players, how you're going to teach them about the game, for the elements that are important and a bit complicated, to try to place them in a challenging situation. You put them in front of a problem, in front of a lock, and then you give them the key. And a lot of games just give keys, like say, oh yeah, you can build in that game, oh, you can do this. But at that moment, I don't really care about that. So I'm not going to put the attentional resources that I need to really think about it and memorize this. So that's really important. You need players to pay attention to it. And they're going to pay attention to it if they're motivated, because it's meaningful at that moment. So competence, like I was talking about, is the sense of progression and sense of being in control. So that's the reason why usability is also very important. If you don't remember what button to press to do whatever ability, then you don't feel in control, and then you don't feel competent in your game. And competence is not necessarily becoming more skillful. So you have games that are skill-based, like Rocket League or some FPS games. You get better at it the more you play it. But you also have games it's not skill-based, like RPGs that typically are not skill-based. You don't necessarily, the more you play, you don't necessarily get more skilled at it, but you level up, so you get more abilities, so it's easier for you to play the game. So this is the reason why we like progression bars. We like to level up, because it's giving us a feedback on our competence. We're getting better at the game. Autonomy is all about being able to doing self-expression. That's the reason why creating your avatar, choosing your dance move that you care about, choosing your banner, your colors, all that is really important, because we can express ourselves. We can show who we are and what we love and what we care about. It's also about being able to do meaningful choices in the game. In relatedness, well, we're a very social species. We need to relate to each other in a meaningful way. So I need to feel that I'm useful to you and that you are useful to me. So that's the reason why in a lot of games, like multiplayer games are exploding. Usually the online multiplayer games are more successful overall. It's not true for every game, but multiplayer games are highly successful because we can either compete with other people or cooperate with others, and we really like that. So that's really important in games to really think about, all right, in my game, are players getting more competent? Do they have the feedback that they gain competent? Do they know how to become more competent? Are they being able to get some autonomy? Like if you think about a game like Minecraft, it's not that good in the other stuff, but it's super good in autonomy because you can create whatever you want. And the relatedness actually happened more outside of the game through YouTube. It was not necessarily part of the game itself. So we need to think about these things. It's also important to set clear goals for players to have objectives and to have short-term, medium-term, long-term objectives, so they always are engaged and keep playing and know, oh, I'm going to do that mission, so then I can get that, and once I get that, I can unlock whatever mission and get bigger rewards, and this is how we keep engaged with the game. Emotion, when we talk about emotion in game design, we talk a lot about what we call game feel. So I don't know if you heard about that term, but game feel is more about how good it feels to interact with the game, the toy aspect of the game. So usually we talk about 3 C's. 3 C's is camera, control, character. So we need to make sure that this is polished because this is going to create something different in terms of emotion. If you have a game that you button mash, it's a different emotion that if you just like press to do something in a very calmly. Or if you have a camera that's super narrow, first-person camera, it's more suitable for a horror game. And if you have a top-down camera, it's more suitable for a strategy game or League of Legends. So all that is going to be very important. Presence is how do I feel present in the game? Are NPCs reacting to me in a believable way? It's all these things that the AI and all that, the music, the story, that's going to be really interesting for me to feel that I'm in there. And physical reality it's not about being photorealistic. It's about being believable. So if I touch gems, they're gonna explode, and you have particle effect. Or if there's a very strong character running towards me, every time the foot is hurting the floor, you have camera shake. That gives some physicality to that. Oh, that's a very strong character. So all that is very important to create emotion for the game. And you need also to bring discovery and novelty and surprises to your players, because once you're into, a habit, a routine, at some point you don't pay attention anymore. And we want players to raise their awareness every now and then, so that's the reason why you need to surprise them. And that's impacting engagement and awareness. So that's why what we call exotic gameplay is really important, or a new thing, and you're like, what is this? So I'm going to give you an example in Fortnite about game feel. In Fortnite we have loot boxes, and loot boxes are not the same in Fortnite like in other games. In many games, loot boxes are just either a card pack or a gacha or a chest that you open. And Fortnite is a piñata, and you have to hurt it to open it. So it's already like different. It's like it's fitting more the Fortnite. And what's interesting with this one, it's reacting to you. It's reacting to what you're gonna do. So I'm gonna show you the video. You're going to see a red circle. That's eye tracking. When we do playtests, we follow where people are looking at. And you see the mouse. When you move the mouse, the eyes of the piñata is following you. And when you're about to hit it, it's reacting to what you're doing. So it looks like this. Sorry, and we have to do a little exercise again.
It's a lovely day for loot. Have at it.
Ooh,
Oh, I am feeling lucky. Hey, check out this nice loot.
unplug it so I can talk. It's actually pretty loud. So you see, there's a lot of particle effect, and when you know you're gonna have a cool loot, it's turning silver, and sometimes it's even turning gold, and you know you're gonna get something super cool. It's raising your expectation. You're like, oh, you're all excited, and this is what is game feel. It's the pleasure of interacting with that thing, which is just a loot box. It could be just clicking on it and it's opening it. So that's the reason why celebrating stuff like that is really important to raise the engagement of your players. And the last one is game flow. Game flow is, like I was saying, keeping the player in a flow that it's always not too easy, not too hard. So it's about the right level of challenge for your players. You don't want a game that's too easy. You do not want a game that's too hard. It's about pacing, the rhythm of stress and pressure. You know, like there's the reason why we have waves of enemies in many games, because at some point you need to be like all excited, but you can't get all excited for an hour, so you need to be able to breathe a little bit. So this is when you can actually check your ammunition and, you know, like do other stuff. So we need waves of moments where you're all excited and moments where it's quieter. And the learning curve. So this is what I was talking about you. The onboarding part is really important because you need players to be competent and without getting overwhelmed by all the information they have at the beginning. And this is how we build tutorials. In Fortnite, so the PvE, the Save the World, ever since like 2014, we started to work on the onboarding. How are we going to teach players to build? How are we going to teach players how to do many things in the game? And so we tried very early on different versions to see how we could place the player in a situation that's meaningful for them to learn about building, and so they can learn by doing, because this is really important. You want players to learn by doing because it's heavier process, you need more attention and resources, so you're going to remember it better. So I'm going to show you the first iteration, one of the first iterations. So to place them in a situation that's meaningful, the level designer thought, okay, we're going to have a tractor in that barn, and we're going to say that player is going to have to protect the tractor, because whatever, we can figure it out in the narrative later why. And of course in the barn there's just one opening, so we're hoping it's going to prompt players to understand they just need to close that opening by building walls. And so it looked like this. So again, I'm sorry, I'm going to do that little thing. This is coming from a playtest. So the player is finding the tractor, and of course the first thing they try to do is destroy it. But then we tell them, no, you need to protect it. And they have, just 2 minutes before the zombies arrive. So the players try to figure out what to do, and they walk around, so they see the opening, so most of them understand they need to build, so this is the first time they discover the building thing. But see, it's not really intuitive, because they actually need to destroy these little panels to be able to place the walls there. So for a lot of players tried to build around it. It was not easy, so I cut it down a little bit. And so finally the player tried to do something, because only had 30 seconds, place one wall, and then second wall, no more wood. So they actually cannot place a second wall. And this is where it's actually not super meaningful, because we tell them to protect a tractor is misleading. It's not happening anywhere else in the game. You have to build around the barn or to destroy panels. It's not intuitive. And the players in a stressful situation, there's a timer and they're set for failure. So yes, there's context and means that they can learn by doing, but it's really misleading, and the meaning is kind of poor. And so this is how they iterated. They decided that, hey, how about we just spawn the player in the pit? And so this is how it looks like. The player spawns in a pit, and to get out of the pit, they need to build, this time, stairs. This is what I was explaining to you earlier. They have plenty of resources around, and they don't have any timer, but they want to get out of here, because you don't want to stay in the pit. So you're naturally pressured to get out of here. And that's it. That's much better. You don't have to create a whole complicated story. Engineering-wise, it's easier. And for the players, it's much more meaningful. And this time, you set them for success. So you have to think about your mechanic, and if it's a complicated mechanic, you don't necessarily do something complicated to teach players to aim and shoot if you're doing an FPS. But for a mechanic that's complicated like building, you want to make sure that players are going to be able to learn about it in a meaningful way. So that's what we try to do. We iterate to make sure, like, and you saw like we just iterated on how we're going to do that, but then the narrative comes later. And this is how today in Fortnite you spawn in the cave, you first shoot at the zombies, and to get out of the cave you need to build the stairs. So that was Game UX is about the usability and engageability. And the last thing you need to understand is how we do that. We use the scientific method because we're all biased, we all have opinions, and you need to find out what's really happening to players so you can fix the right problems. And if you don't have a scientific method, science is all about not biasing the results. So we use a lot of protocols to avoid biasing the results. So this is what we build at Epic, the playtest lab. So here you see where we have players. They sit here, there's dividers, so they don't look at each other, so there's no peer pressure. And there's overhead screens, so in their screen they see the normal game, and what we see the eye tracking, we see their face, we see a bunch of information, and here are the observers of the test that take a lot of notes of what's going on, and us, like researchers and the developers, we're here. And this room is soundproof because we need to be able to shout, to cry, like, what is going on? Or to cheer, like, oh yes, finally this is working, woohoo! And we don't want players to hear that, so it's soundproofed. And this is how we observe players. And it's important that you keep in mind that we test the game here. We don't test the players. We test our audience. We test how our audience is going to be able to experience the game, and is it what we expected. And there's a lot of stuff that we can do all throughout the development process. Of course, you don't test the same things in conception that you're going to do in closed beta, but there's many things you can test very, very early on. And one of the misconceptions is like, oh, we can test stuff later, but sometimes and often it's too late. And if you wait until your game is already like in alpha to test stuff, you're going to have like tons of problems and no time to fix it. When you test things in pre-production, when you prototype, sometimes you just like test, you do paper prototypes, like to test icons, you can do paper prototypes. You can just do also interaction, like a very low fidelity interactive prototypes in Balsamic or Azure or whatever you want to use. So you can test the concept and iterate a little bit here because it's really cheap before you implement it and even before like you art it up in the end. The earlier you do it, the faster and cheaper it is to fix it before you add layers of complexity. So there's a lot of stuff they can do at different levels. I'm not gonna describe it all, but keep in mind that you can test a lot of things very, very early on, and you should, because otherwise you're gonna, if you do that early, you can actually save money and time because you're gonna find the problems very early at the time. It's really cheaper to fix it. And in Fortnite, we have a very strong UX pipeline. So anytime we were testing something, first of all, we're testing really at moments it was convenient for the team because there's many times where the build is broken because we implement a bunch of stuff and it's not debugged. So we want to make sure that we wait at the end of a sprint or a milestone, so then we have a strong build, then we can test this build. And we ask for the developers, what are your hypotheses at that level? You know, what do you care about players understanding at that level so we can actually test that? So we had a very strong process during the production. So we had moments like very regularly where we're testing things, and then we were triaging all the problems and make sure that we're fixing the things. And so we could retest after that what was going on. And they had dedicated sprints to fix UX issues instead of implementing new features. And that's going to be very important at some point. It's very tempting to just add stuff. But if your foundation is already not very strong, the more you add, the more you take the risk for it to crumble. So at some point, you're going to have to make the choice, and I know it's hard, to like, no, we're not going to add a feature right now. We need to fix the UX issues first before we can actually add more features. And when you find a weakness, you need to figure out, why is this happening? What's going on? Is it coming from my design? Is my system design unbalanced, for example, if people don't like the loot design? Or is it okay, but it's a problem from perception? Maybe it's something in the art that makes people perceive it in a way that they believe it's not fair or it's not balanced. So you have to be careful, because sometimes we're very fast into saying, oh, players think that, it's really long to harvest things. Maybe we should just change, the system design and bump everything up. But sometimes it's not the right thing to do. Here's an example of Fortnite. A lot of players were complaining that it felt grindy. Okay, so why does it feel grindy? Well, first of all, it's a harvesting game, so of course you're going to have to harvest stuff. But look at every time you destroy something, every hit you do to, for example, you want to gather metal, and so you try to destroy a car. Every hit you do to the car, you see a very nice and beautiful 3D model of metal flying over you and then disappearing. So artists love it because it's beautiful. But to me, I think that it's probably giving the players the impression that they gather one piece at a time, where in reality they gather way more. They gather like over tens of it at one hit. And this is where I told them, hey, we need to remove that 3D model flying over and add this information instead. So I did not win that battle, but instead they add that information in there, but it's, in the back of the characters. I don't think it's really obvious enough for players to understand. And this is kind of important, because if players don't have the information in a very obvious way, then they really know what sort of thing they need to destroy to gather metal more efficiently. It's actually not by destroying cars. You gather metal more efficiently if you find piles of pipes, metal pipes, and then you search them. It's way faster, and you get a lot of metal over there. But if players don't get this information, they cannot get more competent into harvesting. So that's all the sort of things. Maybe it's not a problem in your design, maybe it's a problem of perception, because again, perception is subjective. So that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about today. So remember the big pillars of user experience in games. You have usability with a bunch of guidelines, and you have engageability. You can take this as a checklist whenever you're trying to fix problems in your game. Try to look, so you have a problem that's not working the way you wanted. Look first in usability. Is it a problem that the signs and feedback are not clear? People don't really understand what's going on. Maybe there's too much workload for players. They're overwhelmed. Or maybe it's a problem in engageability. Maybe they're not motivated enough because they don't have clear goals. They don't understand what they need to do next. They cannot really project themselves. They're not excited about getting something. And that's going to help you to find out the right problems to solve. And remember, there's no one recipe to make successful games. But with these ingredients, you can make your own recipe for your game. So that's it. Thank you. Muchas gracias por su atención. Vision of it, so you can look into it. It's on my YouTube channel. I'm on Twitter. If you have questions later on, you can hit me up on Twitter. And of course, if you have questions now, I don't know if I have time to take a few questions.
Vamos a hacer una ronda de preguntas. No sé si quieren hacer alguna pregunta seria.
Well, in other DEVHRs, we were studying about the video games made by for animals like cats and dogs. Those the animals also have cognition, perception. Does the human study their cognition in a way for applying in games? Maybe.
So I'm not sure what your question is actually. So you're talking about animals that have their own cognition and perception, and how
There also is video game for animals like for cats, a tablet to catch them.
Yes, sure. Well, it turns out it's easier to entertain cats. And the thing is, you don't really need to entertain cats because they don't have any money to spend in your game. It's their owners that have the money. So you need to make sure the owners find that super cool so they can pay for your game. So that's the thing. Sometimes your audience is not the one paying. And if you have a free-to-play game, you need to make sure that the one paying are the one going to be engaged. So yeah, you can look at animals, you can look at what they're gonna like, but they don't interact that much. I mean, humans are more efficient interacting with tablets, and it's more complex. But yeah, absolutely, it's the same process, it's just simpler.
His question spawned another question.
Yeah.
That's games for little kids.
Yeah.
Little kids don't pay for the games, so you're making the game entertaining for the parents.
So for kids, it's a bit different, and this is where we have a huge problem with educational games, where a lot of people, parents are going to buy some games believing it's good for their kids, where the games are not educational and not fun. So for kids, first of all, you need to understand that children don't have the same cognition as adults. Depending on their age, they are not. So first of all, we're talking about attentional resources. Adults can maybe like follow 3 points and trying to figure out what's going to happen. For kids, it's way lower. They don't have as good as a memory. So it's already scarce for us, but for kids, little kids, it's even worse. So you need to make sure the game is not too fast, and they love to repeat a lot of stuff. So it's going to be more routine for kids. And the more they grow up, you can make it more challenging, but you need to understand child development to make sure it's not going to be too stressful, because kids cannot manage stress. Like if you put a timer in games for kids, it's very hard for them. But also, this is where, so I'm going to talk about ethics. Loot boxes, for example, we know that it's very engaging because we know that random rewards is more engaging than when you're sure to get what you want to get. We know that. We know that from Skinner box and the rats that trying to get the food. So we know that. But when you're an adult, you have enough self-control. Like for most adults, you have some problem. People have problems gambling, for example. But most adults are good to, at some point, they're going to indulge themselves in binge watching a Netflix series or buy a lot of loot boxes because they're excited. But at some point, we're going to stop. Children, it's way harder. Children and teenagers are not mature enough in terms of self-control, so it's harder for them to resist. And it's going to be very emotional for them. So this is the reason why having loot boxes in games where kids are going to be able to play them poses a ethical problem. Because for them, it's really hard to stop themselves. So all this stuff, we need to think about it. Think about, how kids are going to experience it. It's going to probably be way more harder for them to manage a lot of stuff like stress, like loot boxes, like, you're going to get that reward when you only have, 20 hours to get it. For kids, like, oh my God, I actually want it. It's really hard for them to get over it. So that's all the things you need to think about. And of course, if parents are the ones buying it's different. Like kids, are good to say, oh, I want this for Christmas or whatever. So it depends on what age we're talking about. If we're talking about a very young age, then yes, you target parents. And that's the reason why we have problems with the educational games, because the parents don't necessarily know what's going to be fun for their kids and what's really educational. But past a certain age, kids are really good at saying what they want.
Hi. My question is, in your experience, your opinion. Okay. Okay, in your experience, your opinion, what's the difference between players gamers, that right now they have 12, 11, maybe 13 years old, and players that right now are adults like me, but when I was 13 or 12. Did you know what I mean? Yep.
So it's all tied to perception because we don't have the same context. So when we grew up, we didn't have like that many games. And games were hard and we had to figure them out. And because there were not that many games, we were just excited to just keep playing. And we had to buy the game, so you were stuck with that game even if you didn't like it. And your parents might not want to, buy you another game if you didn't like it. So our expectations were different. Like today, kids have a different expectation because everything is faster, it's more on demand. They want something, they can have it right away. They don't like it, it's free to play most of the time, so they can try something else. So they have way less patience. But that's because the environment is easier and more intuitive to us. And so now we're used to that, and we don't want to go back to the time when it was complicated. Unless you're super motivated to play that game because you were hyped or because all your friends are playing it. So in that case, you're going to get over your frustrations. But this is all what I was talking about, perception. It's your prior knowledge, it's your expectations. That's going to change how you perceive things. It's going to change your motivation into overcoming a challenge. So that's really important to know who you're targeting and what are their expectations. Does that make sense?
Thanks. Is there any strange measurement that your bosses are asking you? Like, this game has to be 15% better in UX, for example. Something strange like that the business guys are asking you?
Yes, but not, we don't say like 15% better UX because that doesn't mean anything. UX is how good the game is, so it's about everything. But what can happen is when the bosses look at telemetry data, because they like that. We like numbers, like, oh, numbers is exciting, like, oh, and what does that mean? And sometimes they believe that we need to fix something, and they don't do the scientific method. They're getting biased into believing we need to fix one thing when it's actually not what we should do. We need to stop and think and make hypotheses and try to figure out what is the right problem to solve. So sometimes this is what is difficult because the executives are going to believe we need to fix something. Sometimes they're right, but sometimes they're wrong, and because they don't necessarily use the scientific method, you're just stuck with their good gut feelings or not. So if they have bad gut feelings, then you're stuck because you know that this is not the thing we should do, but they believe this is the thing you should do. And because we're all biased, even if you show them afterwards, see, it's not helping, there's something that we call cognitive dissonance. It's a bias. Like when you try to do something and it's not working, you're going to post-rationalize it. I don't know if you heard the fable with the fox who's trying to reach the grapes on the tree, the high grapes, and he's trying to reach the grapes and it's not working. It's not working. At some point, say, "Oh, they're probably sour anyway." So when we fail, we don't want to recognize we fail. We're gonna invent a story to make us feel good, and that's a very strong bias, and that makes us not really understand why we failed. And even if we have the proof in front of us, we're going to come up with a story that, oh no, it wasn't that. I'm not stupid, And that's a big problem. It's also creating all sorts of problems like racism and sexism and all that. All that is tied. So in video games, it's not as dramatic impact, but the dramatic impact could be like the game is failing and everybody's laid off. So sometimes it could have a dramatic impact. So it's hard because it's hard to make people see the truth because you need to have a very strong methodology, and usually it takes longer to figure out what's happening instead of following your gut feeling. And people want immediate, because now we used to have immediate answers for everything. People, want an easy answer that feels good instead of really look hardly into what's going on, face what's going on and try to figure it out. And that's the reason why we fall for a lot of stuff, just like clickbait. We're like, oh, the 5 food you need to eat or not eat to lose weight. We lack that because, yes, I want a simple solution to lose weight. But simple solutions usually don't work. If it's too good to be true, it's probably not true. But we're very enticed to believe in that. And so this is what executives sometimes are doing. they see something shiny, or they think they believe the solution is there, and because it's more easier to just like hold on to that easy solution, that we're gonna just fall for it, and even if it's not working, we're gonna post-rationalize it. So yeah, that short answer, yes, that happens.
This is a YouTube's question. How much time do we need to do a test for a feature and asset, and how much resources do we need for to do it?
So it's going to depend on the test, actually. For what? Yeah, but it's going to depend. So it depends on where you at in your feature. Is it a big system? Is it just a small thing? Like the icons for Fortnite, it's not taking long. You can just like do a survey, send it out, like, oh, this is a game about this and this and that. What is this icon? What does it do? And you can figure out if it's perceived correctly. If you want to verify if building is working, if people understand the signs and feedback of building, where they can build, where they cannot build, can they understand how to swap material, it's going to take longer. So it really depends on how complicated is the feature, and also how much time you need to onboard players to get there. So for icons, they usually need to be intuitive, even if you don't play the game. But for something more complex, like the building system, or understand the metagame and something, that's going to take more time to get the players there. So it can take anywhere into 10 minutes to just like have players have a quick answer. And sometimes we can do what we call rapid iterative test and evaluation. We do that usually internally. So this is, for example, in 1313. It was a game, it's a bit like Uncharted, but with Star Wars. And so it was supposed to be on console. So we wanted to make sure that the players we were targeting were having an intuitive, like a good game feel with the controllers. So what we developed the level designers created a gym level where you just have targets popping in different angles, and we just ask players or like developers to just aim as fast as they could, so we could see if they were overshooting or just stopping earlier, so we can refine like the default sensitivity and the controls. So when you do that, it can be fast. You bring 1-2 people, you see, oh, they're all overshooting, so I need to change a little bit the setting, and then you bring in new people and you iterate. So that can be fast within their own company, but at some point you need to have players outside that come in to play, so you need to recruit them, so that can take a while. That's the reason why it's good to have researchers to help you out, recruit the right people, because you need absolutely to have the right audience to test your game. Because if you're making a game like an FPS, but you're bringing people that play League of Legends, that's not going to work out, because you need the people with their right prior experience and expectations. So all that can take a lot of time. Like for Fortnite, where we're sometimes we're having tests across several days, so we can look at the progression. So that would take like a week to prepare it, and then like 4 days for players to play, and then like 3 more days to analyze all the data and give it back to the team. And sometimes we had a very short thing. We just wanted to see, do players understand how to do a simple task? So that would take just an hour to figure it out, and then we could just give it back to the team. So that depends on the complexity of the feature and where you're at in the development of that feature. So there's no easy answer for this one. Sorry. If I have any questions that come up later, don't hesitate to hit me up on Twitter or LinkedIn. And thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you, Celia. Celia Hoden. Thank you so much. Ok, bueno, por el día de hoy damos por concluido el primer día de DEVHR. Los esperamos mañana en el cuarto coloquio de investigadores de videojuegos en la Facultad de Ciencias Políticas y Sociales. Échenle un ojo también, va a tener como contenido muy jugoso. Va a estar presente la doctora Blanca López, Roberto García Madrid también va a estar presente. La demás programación la pueden consultar en Facebook, Twitter, en DEVHR MX. Mañana va a seguir el taller de Tonancing, de Clay Modeling Workshop. Y el miércoles nos vemos las conferencias en el W02. Entonces, cualquier cosa, dudas, a las 10 de la mañana arrancamos, entonces para que estén al pendientes. Los talleres el día de mañana, HP, tercer piso, ahí nos vemos. Si no, ya identifican al staff con su cabeza bien low poly, entonces, cualquier duda. Bueno, muchas gracias por haber asistido al primer día de DEVHR. Nos vemos.